and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And this is Nate Payne.
And today we're talking about 3 Amityville movies. Amityville, The Evil Escapes, Amityville... What's the next one? Oh,
It's About Time.
It's About Time, and then Amityville, A New Generation. Nate,
Yes.
you recommended these to me. Have you had these, like, in your back pocket for a long time? Why have I never seen these movies?
I really have. So, I don't know. Did we do an episode on Amityville? Or you and...
You and I did.
We did. Okay. I couldn't remember. So, I know I said back then, like, I did a book report on the first book, and then got, like, really obsessed with the movies when I got a double feature of 1 and 2. And then, like, we used to rent movies all the time, and they were... A New Generation and It's About Time were both movies that I saw on the shelf, like, all the time, but I didn't actually see them until after I got into the Amityville movies. And at the time, I was really young, so I was like, what the hell are these? Like, they don't even have anything to do with the house.
Right.
But, oh, boy,
So
they're wonderful.
It reminds me of Friday the 13th, the series, because it's these cursed objects,
Mm-hmm.
which also reminds me of, like, the Warrens and all of that. So it all ties together in this world, and I just think these were ahead of their time in a way.
There's such a time capsule of the 90s.
Oh, yes.
Also. But yeah, no, I fully agree. And there's actually a novel written by John G. Jones called Amityville: The Evil Escapes. And the credits of all 3 of these movies say, from the book by John G. Jones. And the funny thing is, that book is about objects from the house, like causing trouble, but none of the movies are based on any specific story in that book.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
It's so weird. And, like, when the 4th one came out, the Evil Escapes, it was originally actually called the Amityville Horror, The Evil Escapes, which I don't know if you're super familiar with the copyright things going on with George Lutz throughout all of this.
Well, a little bit, because I know we touched on it before.
Yeah, they originally were going to do more TV movies based on, like, the Lutzes. Because there's... I know I talked about this before, but there were so many novels. And, like, 4 or 5 of them are meant to be, quote-unquote, nonfiction.
Wow.
And they're all absurd, and I love them.
I mean, I feel like this should have been maybe... Or it still could be, like, a weekly series, like an anthology, because you could go object to object, house to house. I mean, there's probably unlimited number of objects that could have been there, right?
I would love that. Especially the one that stood out to me the most as being, like, ridiculous as far as, like, the object itself was the It's About Time.
Yeah.
But not because the object was crazy, but because it wasn't meant to be, like, the Lutzes owned it or anything. Like, it was this ancient clock that came from, like, a witch's house or
Right.
whatever.
I know,
Like...
that one, it was just like, wait, what's going on?
Yes.
It really went off the rails. But, okay, so let's start with 1989, Amityville: The Evil Escapes. Now, this movie, it really surprised me because it was made for TV. It aired on NBC, and, like, they did a good job for, like, a made-for-TV horror movie.
I agree, and it was directed by the writer Sander Stern of the original movie.
Okay, cool.
I don't know if he wrote it, but it's so great. I mean, the scene at the beginning when they're exercising the house, and you actually see the evil go into the lamp.
Right.
Because that's the general storyline, is it's a lamp from the house. And it's just... I love almost everything about the movie. I think it's absurd. The casting is crazy. I mean, how can you not love, like, Patty Duke
I know.
and Jane Wyatt?
No, I wrote down that I love the casting because also it just feels so 90s. Like, I feel like I knew every single one of these people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I the acting, like, I just felt like it was so on point for the 90s. Like, I know it's 89, but it was just like, oh my gosh, yes!
The grandmother reminds me so much of my grandma.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the way just the way she talks to the mother and, like, their relationship kind of cracks me up. Because, and those kids and the fashions.
Oh, I know. Oh, it's so good. So the grandmother's sister, so their great aunt, finds this lamp, of course, at the sale, and she cuts her finger on it, and it was so disgusting, and it's like so like Amityville, like, you know, if you touch this cursed object, like it's just gonna eat away at you, and it was just so gross. And she has to ship it across the country. Like, how much could that have cost?
Right, that thing looked like it weighed a ton. Although 89, well, probably like $10.
Yeah, who knows? But I just love it how all of the animals know, like this lamp gets brought into her house and all the animals know there's some evil in it. And I just love that reoccurring theme. Has Shanty ever reacted? I know that happens in a later movie, but has Shanty ever reacted to a person or an object like this?
Shanty doesn't react to anything.
Oh, okay.
The cats have.
Oh, okay.
They do that, like watching ghosts float around, that kind of thing.
Right.
When I was growing up, we lived in a house that I still, like, I don't care. It was haunted. And we had a dog there, and she would get weird about stuff.
Oh.
Like, super weird about stuff. So.
Yeah, that creeps me out when animals sense something, or like they're looking in a corner and growling. It's like, wait, what? It's creepy.
It's terrifying.
Another scary sequence is, you know, Patty Duke's getting ready for bed. She sees her husband in the reflection, and then, of course, he's not there. And then later she feels his arm over her when she's sleeping, and she turns around. Like, those are really classic scares that I liked.
Yes. I was surprised for 1989 NBC to allow some of the gore.
Right.
It's not a super gory movie, but there's the scene involving the garbage disposal.
Oh yeah, that was pretty horrific.
Which was big. Although I love later when the plumber is under the house. And this actually, like, the first time I saw it, I jumped super hard. I was kind of embarrassed. When he's, like, working on the pipes and it breaks open and all the, like, black stuff comes out and the hand.
Yes.
Which is, like, still fully intact.
Oh my God, I know.
The garbage disposal lopped it off at the wrist.
Yes, and I love it. It's so ironic too, because like literally as he's doing that, that teenage guy was inviting the daughter out to go bowling on a date, and I'm like, oh no, he's never gonna bowl again.
Yes. Yes.
It's like the perfect amount of like gore, which was, you know, safe for kids at the time, but also kind of ridiculousness. But I still loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the two things that stand out to me in that movie are how brightly lit everything is. Yes. And I think that might be budgetary, having to do with, like, being made for TV. But everything's so bright all the time. You don't see a lot of horror movies that don't really have a lot of atmosphere, but in that it still is reasonably effective for what it is.
Yes, and I agree. Like, it's almost creepier because things are happening in the daytime. It's like, wait, it's not just at night, you know, at 2 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, and another scene that stands out, like the other big thing, when Patty Duke is writing, she's like typing or something, I don't quite remember, and the lamp is like creeping up behind her.
Oh my God, I know. It's just, it's like so wrong and it's so subtle.
Mm-hmm. It's goofy, but still, like I said, reasonably effective. And
right.
It's a good one. The other two, in my opinion, are much more enjoyable, but they're also like 90s direct-to-video sort of trashy, and I love that.
Right. I like speaking of subtle things, that it didn't take a lot, like, of special effects, but the kid, when he is playing with the chainsaw and then just starts destroying things, you know,
yes.
All it needed was for him to pretend like, you know, he couldn't handle it, but it wasn't like a big CGI thing.
Right.
So I appreciated that. And then...
It started by itself.
Yes. And then also, like, when they go to Jessica's room and it's all destroyed and there's, like, drawings all over, it's, like, creepy enough, like, okay, if somebody else did this or if she did it, it's creepy either way.
Yeah, that reminded me of the scene in Amityville 2 when the kids are in their room and, like, the paintbrushes start painting stuff on the walls and freaking out. Yes.
Yeah, so I liked it. Oh, and the poor bird ended up in the toaster oven. Oh, God.
Poor bird, I know.
I mean, I'm glad that...
all the animals get various. And that's the ending, too, when the cat's eyes are glowing.
Yes.
Which they never follow up on. But
I know. I wish that there was a sequel of just this evil cat.
They could go down that road. That could be the first episode of the anthology series. That would be
great. Okay, so if I ever walked into someone's house and they had this lamp, like, I'm out. Because, like, first of all, on various levels, it's not right.
Yeah, I would definitely be like, where the hell did this ugly lamp come from? Like, that is a lamp that should not exist.
No. It's like sort of... No, I know. It's just wrong.
Yes.
There was a couple of really cool practical effects, like the phone melting in the priest's hand. That was pretty cool. And just like the phone call's not going through, and then even the telegram gets lost. It's just this sense of...
And that's all classic Amityville.
Yes.
Like, cutting off communication. Oh, and the priest. The necessary hunky priest.
Right. I was like, how do I recognize this guy? And, I mean, he's been in a ton, but the thing that I recognize him from most recently is he's Michelle Williams' father in The Greatest Showman.
What?
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
That's crazy. I'm definitely going to have to go rewatch that.
Yeah.
Just to see it. That's funny. I had no idea.
It's so, and he looks pretty much the same. I mean, he looks older, but he still looks good, so...
Nice. Yeah. Very nice.
I liked Peggy got strangled in the attic by the lamp, and then they're up there, and Jessica's floating, and it's all so dramatic, and it comes to a head, and the blood is pouring out of the attic door. It's so dramatic. And then Grandma throws the lamp out the window, like, yay, Grandma. She had picked up the axe, and I'm like, oh, no, like, she's done for, but actually, she did end up saving the day, so that was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, chucking it out the window was pretty... And that thing looked heavy.
Yeah.
So, she's got some serious strength.
Oh, you know what? The Amanda, the teenage daughter, you know what she's from? Did you recognize her?
I did recognize her, and I do remember that she was in something else, but I don't remember.
Demons 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just happened to rewatch that the other day, and so and then I was like, oh my god, I think that's her, and it was, so...
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
She's in... I don't think... Well, maybe that is the one I'm thinking of. That's... and I love, like, the thing about... I was saying earlier about the fashions. Like, the grandma makes a comment about her revealing clothing. Or
right.
Whatever. She's, like, covered neck to toe. I don't know what was going on there.
I know. Like, there's actually nothing revealing about this, but who knows?
Gotta get those windsuits.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the next one, 1992. It's about time. This, like you said, is about the clock. I like how we set up this clock and we see the family's reflection in it. And again, 90s fashion is just perfect.
90s fashion. I love this movie. It's absurd, but this one has, like, everything I love about weird 90s horror movies, and it is from the director of Hellraiser 2.
Yes, I saw that. That is so cool.
And there to me, it's, you can kind of tell, like, the gore effects in the movie. Like, I love, this was direct to video. They basically had free reign to do what they want, and the movie is freaking insane. Like, from the house essentially becoming its own clock,
right?
With the gears and the walls and everything changing, and the daughter becoming sexually promiscuous,
yes.
And the whole. So what's that? the dad, or not the dad, the mother. Nope, I'm wrong. The dad having his, like, ex-girlfriend living with them.
Yes, it's so...
And then her boyfriend shows up later.
It's a good random person to kill, I guess.
Yeah, it was crazy. And that nightmare sequence, though, where he pulls the gun on him, I thought was... Oh, my gosh. It's really well done.
Yeah. The other thing that was well done is the gore in this. You know, he gets attacked by the dog, and we don't really see what's happening. But afterwards, we absolutely see these bandages that she needs to change. And she's, like, cleaning the wound with hydrogen peroxide. It's so disgusting.
The whole time, I'm like, bring this man to a hospital. Like, he's, like, gangrenous, leaking, like, blood. It's like the finger in the previous movie times a million. Like, this, I can only imagine how bad that must have smelled.
Oh, my God. And, like, she goes to check on him, and he's, like, working on his architecture or whatever. And the sheets are just covered in, like, yellow and blood, like pus and blood, like gross.
They go all out, and like the person, was it him? Somebody melted in the garage.
Yes.
That, I feel like they go all out for it, and it's great. And the old psychic lady that the son is friends with.
Yep, Iris.
Her death was one of my favorite cinema deaths of all time.
I know, it's so over the top. And again, during daylight hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love, was it like a diaper cleanup service with a stork on top of the van?
Exactly.
And she goes outside, and it almost crashes into her. She's like, oh my God, I survived, this is amazing. And then the giant stork tips forward and impales her. Oh, and I was like, this is the silliest, most wonderful thing I've ever seen.
I know, it's just perfect. I loved it. Now, go ahead.
And the daughter dying via electrocution, he, like, plugged the headphone cord into her mouth.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Something I appreciated was, like, this subtle thing of, like, the son, a lost time. He just walked into the living room. He was having the same conversation, but then when he came back, it was, like, several hours later. Mm-hmm. And that would be terrifying, because it's thought of, like, losing your mind or losing time or...
Yeah, he literally just steps out of the room and comes back, and the mom, or the girlfriend lady is in her robe, putting stuff away, and she's like, where'd you go off to? And that's the thing, too, this poor kid, like, gets blamed for everything. Somebody, why don't they ever believe anyone that, I mean, I guess it would be kind of unbelievable to be like, this clock is haunted.
Right.
And I also do love that the lady has a book that has a picture of the clock in it. Like, what are the chances?
Of course she does. So the other night, this is tying into when that dog attacks the guy. The other night, I was scrolling through Facebook or whatever, and there was this video of, like, a girl and her pet snake, and it had 21,000 comments. And I'm like, okay, well, I just have to see what people are saying. And everyone's like, it's going to eat her alive and stuff. So then I went down this rabbit hole, and I don't know if this is you during quarantine, Nate, but I go down these rabbit holes because there's nothing to stop me now. And I started reading about, like, pets attacking their owners. And most of them are, like, the dogs or cats ate the person after they had already died, you know, which is, I guess, fine. But there's been, times with snakes especially, or big cats, of course, where they attack their owners because they don't realize their strength or they feel threatened. And so that night, like, this is the last thing I read about, and then I had all of these, like, nightmares about, creatures attacking me. And Mark is like, you need to, like, read something calming before bed. Have you been having quarantine nightmares, or am I the only one?
Oh, I have the weirdest dreams right now. They're mostly having to do with, like, returning to work, though.
Oh, yeah.
They're, like, realistic. Nothing too crazy. Although I did have one, so, I, like, play Dead by Daylight. Like, it's my flipping job.
Yeah.
I had a nightmare that I was being chased by somebody, and it was really not like the game at all. It was like a real person I knew who was coming after me to kill me, and I'm running, and I hear the noise, and there's, in the game, if you're the last person alive, there's a hatch that opens, and it makes this hum noise, and you can jump into it to live. and I came across the hatch in my dream and, like, jumped in and woke up. I was like, thank God this is here. It was definitely one of those completely random, out of nowhere, like, there's the escape. Yes. So I got lucky. But yeah, I do the rabbit hole thing very much. My big one has been Star Wars.
Okay.
Because the new Clone Wars, and then we end up on these, like, I don't know if you've ever been on TV tropes.
Yeah.
That one, I will spend, like, hours and hours just reading crap about everything.
Oh, no, it's fascinating. And like I said, what else am I going to be doing right now? I mean, I've got extra time, so.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about this next one in 1993, because I feel like I've got some things to weave in here. So Amityville, A New Generation. I feel like they really took a chance and, like, purposely, I think, made a new sort of setting. It was a diverse and interesting cast. And the setup, it just felt totally different than the previous two.
Yes, that movie has a completely different tone from the other two. I feel like the first one feels closer to maybe the original movie.
Right.
Of the three we're talking about. And then the next one is, like, this kind of over-the-top, like, very 90s horror, like, gore fest. And then this one, they spend a lot of time developing the characters.
Right.
And making you kind of care about them on some level.
Right. And it's also very, like, artsy. I mean, literally and figuratively, you know, they're artists living in this loft. But, like, the themes that they're exploring and, like, how this object or these haunted objects sort of makes them manic artists. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the demons dancing,
yes.
The paintings, all of that. The music during that is wonderful. And in high school, lived with my mom in an artist co-op that was kind of similar to that setting, where it was like all artists living around us, and our apartments were humongous and people would do art in them. And it wasn't that different. Like, they would have art shows in their places, and so I have a particular love for this one because of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And there's some familiar actors in this one, too, that surprised me.
Yes. No, I know the main guy. I saw that he was in Jurassic Park: The Lost World.
Yeah, he's in the second one. He's the guy on the subway right at the beginning who makes fun of Jeff Goldblum.
And then I also saw that he is Lonnie Byers in Stranger Things.
Yep. Yeah, when I saw him, I was like, what? That was a big one.
So I like this. The homeless guy that he takes a picture of in the beginning is actually his father, who was the guy from, they don't say it's Amityville. I mean, or they do, but it's, you know, it's not the DeFeos is what I meant to say.
Right, yeah. It happens during Thanksgiving. The whole, like, he's sharpening the knives, and then the guy comes in and shoots them all. I have a headcanon thing about the Amityville movies.
Tell me.
That doesn't fully work, but, okay, so in the first movie, we've heard about the DeFeos and how they killed, and they mentioned the DeFeos in the third one. And then in the second movie, it's the Montellis, who are clearly based on the DeFeos, but, like, it also is clearly taking place in the 80s. He has, you know, a Walkman and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I like to think in my head that there were the DeFeos, and then the Lutzes, and then the Montellis, and then, like, different families living in this house that all end horribly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just my, like, headcanon thing. It's not real, but...
No, but that makes sense, if you look at it that way. So speaking of this art, it's all very, like, dark, and, like, the dancing demons, like you said, and the noose is hanging down, and you just know poor Suki is gonna succumb to a noose, and she does. And then the guy sets up, you know, his greatest fear, which his girlfriend is like, just your fear is that you're gonna kill us, so pretend to kill us. But he, of course, comes in with a real gun at the end, and everyone thinks it's performance art. And I just thought that was like a really brilliant play on, you know, the art scene and...
The art scene, absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
And just the weirdness of performance art, like the guy watching, you know, you sit in the chair watching TV and there's a gun pointed at you.
Right.
And it's like, it could go off at any time.
Oh, my gosh, I know. And then, that, and then this whole the mental hospital thing where the dad was held and he kept having these like flashbacks / memories of what his dad was going through. And then when he got put in there and then everybody who had died was like in a cell, that was really dark. It was really well done and creepy.
Oh, and who appears as the receptionist at the mental hospital?
Oh, yes. What's her name?
Oh, God. I was hoping.
But yeah, I know, and I'm like, oh, she's from all the movies now, the Insidious, yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Well,
Lord.
Anyway, you all know who we're talking about, and I'll edit it in later, like, in a robot
Lin
voice.
Shaye.
There you go.
Good Lord, that's definitely one of those, like, why don't I know this off the top of my head? Lin Shaye.
But it's happening, Nate. Like, the older I get, the more it's happening to me. It's happening.
I know, same.
But, I think it's because we just have so much more knowledge now. It's harder to access,
of course.
That's why.
It's overflowing is the problem. I love Lin Shaye in this movie, and the thing is, you could see all of her lines, like, there's really no reason for her to add in, like, she's flirting with him. That was, clear. And when you actually just look at what she's saying, there's nothing about that. So I feel like she added that. And, like, even though it's a really small role, I can see how she's gained so much notoriety because she brings in these, like, quirkiness bits to her characters that I just love so much.
It could have been played very straightforward and flat, but she just turned it into something memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, I love her.
It. Well, and Terry O'Quinn is in this too, which is crazy because he's so recognizable.
Yes. Yeah. I love, so I'm on this, like, message board on Blu-ray.com where I talk to a lot of people about these things, and the consensus, at least on where I've been on the internet, has been that A New Generation is the weakest of these three.
Okay.
But, like, I don't know. I hard disagree with that, I think.
I liked it, and I don't know if it was, like, the artist level, like, thing that I appreciated or what, but I really like this one.
Yeah, I think taking it into the city, giving it this, like, really weird kind of dreamy tone, and taking the time to establish these characters, I think, is the main difference that stood out to me.
Yeah. No, I liked it.
So.
Oh, yeah, there's another theme that, well, at least the last two movies that I noticed, is they really like showing these sweaty sex scenes.
Oh my God, that's such a 90s, like, Cinemax late at night thing.
God!
That's right, I forgot. Yeah, it totally reminded me of, like, when I was a kid, and I would, like, wake up in the middle of the night and turn on the TV, and there was always some, like, super ridiculous, like, we're just gonna lay here and rub on each other.
Yes. And then just be ridiculously sweaty, which, like, I realize that can happen, but, like, do people think that's, like, what we want to see? I don't know.
He's drenched.
Oh, God.
Yeah, they're very silly, and I feel like that's such a staple of the time.
True. Yes. I haven't seen anything equivalent to that lately in cinema, so.
Yeah, well, and sex scenes nowadays tend to be more, I don't know that realistic is the right word, but they're more, like, believable.
Yeah, it's not like
in the 90s,
like
it was such a specific way of doing them that was, like, this, like, softcore trying to push the eroticism part.
Yes, like the music and the slow pans and, like, the fireplace.
Yes.
Oh my God! Or
it's like Tommy Wiseau in the room.
Yes, and like in the case of this movie, it was a space heater, and I'm like, oh my God, that space heater is going to come into play, and I don't even remember if it did, but
unfortunately, no.
But it was like, okay, somebody's going to get burned, but no. Well,
yes.
So now tell us about Dollhouse. That's the one I wasn't able to watch.
Dollhouse is so good.
I assume it's a dollhouse from the Amityville house. Is that correct?
They don't explain that.
Okay.
So it's this family. They live in California. They move into a brand new reconstructed house, and there's a shed outside, and in the shed is a dollhouse that looks like the Amityville house.
Oh.
And
okay, that would be actually really cool to have.
Well, yeah, I know, right? You can. I saw some on Etsy. They're so expensive, though. But they have. So there's this dollhouse, and to me, like the first time I saw it, I thought it was supposed to be like the site of the original house, because there's this whole thing about the previous house had burned down, and the chimney is the same as what was in the original house. And I really thought they were strongly trying to imply, but then they say they're in California.
Oh, okay.
So I think the idea is that this dollhouse somehow ended up there, and like the dollhouse itself transferred into the big house. And it's another one that's very 90s, very like HBO kind of feeling. It has some fantastic makeup effects. They actually have like real physical demons wandering around at the end.
Oh, wow.
And every demon, so you only really see them in shadow for the most part, like in silhouette. And I was listening to the commentary on it, and apparently each demon is reused from a previous production that the guy had worked on.
Oh, wow.
And like the one that I recognize is from the Tales from the Dark Side movie.
Oh, cool.
That demon makes an appearance. And there were a couple other that I was like, I feel like I've seen these, but I'm not really sure. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. But that one, there's like, oh, we have to watch it. You'll have to come over and watch it sometime.
Yeah.
It's excellent. And it has the sister from that 70s show.
Okay.
I think the original one, because she got replaced at some point. And there's a scene where she and the son go into like make out in the shed or whatever, and there's these giant wasps that come out of nowhere, and one of them crawls into the guy's ear. Ew. And like she gets set on fire. It's insane.
Okay, wow.
It's insane, and it's wonderful. Again, it has a great cast. The thing I like set up in the movie is that they kind of bring in the idea, or they definitely bring in the idea of like the mixed family, because you have this mother who has a son who's a little, like he's a introverted, like nerd kid, and then the father has a son and a daughter who are a little more, like the son is a jock and he makes fun of the kid, and they like don't get along. And there's that like mixed family dynamic that they haven't really explored since the original movie.
Right. And
so that was neat. Okay. And the son, the whole point is the mother, her husband had died, and so the son like hates the new stepdad and all this stuff, but he sees the ghost of his father throughout the movie. And as the movie goes on, the father is like more and more like monstrous or zombie-like, and it's so creepy the way that particular subplot is done.
Oh, that's
We're definitely gonna have to check it out sometime.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so now of these 4 movies, could you rank them like which one is your favorite to which one is your least favorite? Or are there any ties?
I would say yes. I would go backwards. So New Generation is my favorite. It's About Time is excellent. And then 4 is leading the back. So okay. 4 is my least favorite. I love all 3 of them, but they're so different.
Right.
But that's what I would say.
Yeah, of the ones that we watched, A New Generation was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And It's About Time was I would rank 3rd, but not because I didn't like it. I enjoyed all of them, so,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, the clock one was that was the one that I did not see until this box set that I have came out.
Okay.
So I hadn't seen it until just, like, within the last year.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I do think that has maybe something to do with why I'm not as familiar with it.
Right, yeah.
You know.
Hey Rewinders, it's Meg, and we're talking spooky, scary books. I read another nonfiction book. You will be hearing from me soon. I am going to start reading If It Bleeds, the new Stephen King book with I think it's 4 novellas. I'm not really sure. I haven't even cracked it open, but I finally got it on my doorstep. So I'm very excited to be diving into that. Probably today, and you'll hear from me soon. But right now, I want to talk to you about Radium Girls, the Shining Girls of America. And oh, wait, let me make sure. I'm going to look it up, make sure I get the subtitle right. It's by Kate Moore. And it came out several years ago. It was a popular book, and I had heard about it, but I recently had to do a little bit of research on the Radium Girls for the Stephen King book that we are writing, and that's at our editors right now. And I had to do a little research, and I got so interested, I just had to buy this book. And what I did is I made sure to support a small independent bookstore and order from there. So it's called The Radium Girls, The Dark Story of America's Shining Women. So what is it about? Obviously, I don't like to get too spoilery. Not that, can you spoil things that happened in history? I don't know. But I don't want to get too deep into it because I really, really want you to read this book. Now, the reason that I'm calling this a horror book is because there are some pretty horrific things that happen. It's not for the faint of heart, certainly, with some of the descriptions of what happens to these girls. But basically, during World War I, especially, women in America, and we're talking about maybe middle class, lower middle class, women who, needed to work. They weren't fortunate enough to come from rich families. And we're talking about women in New Jersey was one area, and another place in Illinois where there was a plant. And they were places where they made luminous dials for watches, so that basically particularly our soldiers could see the time in the dark. And they really felt special about how they were contributing to the war movement. And what ends up happening is at the time, nobody knew what radium could do to you. But these women would paint with radium, and they were instructed to put the paintbrush in their mouth. And what ended up happening was the radium started to invade their bones, invade their bodies. And we're talking about, women as young as, or girls as young as 14 who were working. So what does that mean? Well, it took a couple of years because of the way radium works. But these women started to deteriorate, and their stories are so, oh my God, so disheartening. But at the same time, some of these women were so brave. In fact, all of these women were so brave. And it's about the fight of them against the radium corporations. And we're talking, in the 1920s and 30s, when women barely had the right to vote, barely had any rights. And it is a story of, yes, there is a lot of tragedy. There are women who die horrible deaths. But it was really a story of, oh my gosh, women coming together and fighting the man. It was such a great book and written so well. It was really the kind of nonfiction book that is not only researched really well, but it is true to these women. It doesn't put words in people's mouths. There was, anytime it was even speculated that somebody might have said something, the author, Kate Moore, points that out. So, it is just rooted in truth, and it's a beautiful story about these women who were lied to by the corporation that they worked for, because, you soon find out that the corporation started to understand and know what was happening to these women's bodies and was not telling them. And, oh my gosh, just like any good nonfiction, it's got pictures in the middle, so you can really, look at the faces of the women who are affected by this awful story. And also, I think what's so cool is really the story of how what they went through has sort of changed the workforce and just life as we know it, science. And it is just such a well-written book, and I can't wait for, oh my gosh, if they did a movie, I've heard about a movie, that would be so cool. So, you have to go out and check out Radium Girls. And you know what? If you even just go and read an article about it, I'm sure you'll be intrigued and want to read the book. It is, again, horrific, some of the things that you're going to read in there, but also just very inspiring. And I think especially in the time we're in right now where, you know, we feel like we want to be on the front lines and helping, and maybe we can't be, but this is sort of a story about women who are on the front lines for us, and they didn't even know it. So check out Radium Girls. It's a great read, and you won't be sorry. All right, next time I will be talking Stephen King. Bye, guys.
Well, this was fun. I'm looking forward to discovering more new horror and or old horror. So the next time you have something to recommend, let us know. And also listeners, let us know, because we're always looking for something fun to watch.
Absolutely.
So until next time, we'll see you scrolling through the horror section.
Thank you.
Bye.